Welcome, friends, to the Secret Doctrine webinar. We are starting today a new series for this webinar. In the first series, we explored the first three stanzas in volume 1 of the Secret Doctrine, the volume that talks about cosmogenesis, the manifestation of the universe. And in this second series, we are going to explore stanzas 4, 5, and 6, which talk about the formation of the universe. The first three stanzas showed how the universe goes from a state of rest or sleep in pralaya to a state of activity in the awakening of the universe. So stanza 3 showed the manifestation of the logos and the preparation of the field of evolution. The stanza 4, as we are going to see, will begin with the manifestation of the gods, of the deities, of the powers that are behind the formation and evolution of the universe. So to begin with this class, we will start with a summary of this stanza that Blavatsky wrote in the Secret Doctrine. It is the stanza talks about the septenary hierarchies, and Blavatsky says, Stanza 4 shows the differentiation of the germ of the universe into the septenary hierarchy of conscious divine powers, who are the active manifestations of the one supreme energy. So the first point here is that there is a oneness, as we explored in the previous series. There is this one supreme energy, this one universal consciousness, and it is this universal oneness that differentiates into a septenary hierarchy of divine powers, of celestial beings. So Blavatsky explains, these celestial beings, are the framers, shapers, and ultimately the creators of all the manifested universe, in the only sense in which the name creator is intelligible. They inform and guide it. They are the intelligent beings who adjust and control evolution, embodying in themselves those manifestations of the one law which we know as the laws of nature. So these celestial beings are the creators of the universe. Now the word creator is used in a special way here. This is not the idea of a deity that creates something out of nothing. The esoteric philosophy proposes that there is a principle that is eternal, that is immutable, that is never created and never destroyed. This one principle has in itself three aspects that we have explored in the previous series. An aspect of consciousness, an aspect of energy, an aspect of substance or matter. And what the divine powers do is to work on this primordial principle and generate a diversity of forms, a variety of consciousness, and a differentiation of the energies from which comes forth the whole universe with all the different entities that inhabit that cosmos. So they are more than creators in the sense of making something out of nothing. As Blavatsky says here, they are shapers, they are builders. They take this primordial principle and shape it in a diversity of forms and states which allow the process of spiritual evolution to begin. Now, these intelligent beings, Blavatsky says, adjust and control evolution, embodying in themselves those manifestations of the one law which we know as the laws of nature. So in the esoteric philosophy, the laws of nature that science knows, and even some others that science has not discovered yet, all these laws of nature are not mechanical, they are not blind, they have an intelligence behind. These celestial beings are the intelligence behind what we see on the physical plane as laws of nature. And all these laws of nature are the manifestation of the one law. There is one law that is immutable, that is eternal, that rules even during the state of rest in pralaya, and is the one that regulates the periods of rest and activity. Because in pralaya everything is one, there is only one law. Now, as soon as manifestation begins, as soon as differentiation sets in, then the one law manifests in many different laws. And these different laws are actually the shadow, Blavatsky says, of the activity of the celestial beings. So from the point of view of the esoteric philosophy, all laws on the physical plane are an effect of the activity of intelligent beings. Now, when we say intelligence, we don't refer necessarily to a human-like intelligence. There are very different degrees of intelligence in the universe. We have the intelligence as it manifests in animals, for example. We have the intelligence as it manifests in human beings. Some aspects resemble the intelligence in animals, and some other aspects are unique to human beings. In a similar way, we have the intelligence as they manifest in celestial beings. In some aspects, that intelligence may resemble that of human beings, but in many others is completely different. So this is the foundation of the esoteric philosophies, that intelligence pervades the cosmos. So Blavatsky goes on saying, generically, these celestial beings are known as the Dzyan Chohans, though each of the various groups has its own designation in the Secret Doctrine. So Dzyan Chohans is a general term that Blavatsky uses to refer to celestial beings of different kinds, of different degrees of evolution, of different functions within the manifestation and the working of the universe. So they are generally known as Dzyan Chohans. Dhyan comes from dhyana, meditation. Chohan comes from the Sanskrit or perhaps the Tibetan word for Lord. So these are the lords of meditation. And then she says, this stage of evolution that stanza 4 will talk about is spoken of in Hindu mythology as the creation of the gods. So the first stage in the awakening of the universe is the manifestation of the Logos, as we saw in the previous series. The Logos is the intelligence behind the universe, the order that is behind everything. Is the ultimate deity, manifested deity in the cosmos. That is the first stage. Once the Logos awakens, there is an emanation of the different celestial beings, which are the architects and the builders of the universe. So stanza 4 talks about the evolution, the emanation, or the creation of the gods, these celestial beings. So let us start with the first shloka. It says, "Listen, ye sons of the earth, to your instructors, the sons of the fire. Learn there is neither first nor last, for all is one number, issued from no number." So this is the first shloka. Now, there is a mention here to the sons of the fire. Blavatsky explains that these terms, the sons of the fire mist, and the like, are connected with a great primordial and universal mystery, and it is not easy to make it clear. We often speak of the hierarchy of flames, of the sons of fire, etc. Shankaracharya, who was a Hindu sage, the greatest of the esoteric masters of India, says that fire means a deity which presides over time, Kala in Sanskrit. So the idea of fire in the esoteric tradition is normally related to the deity. Not only in the esoteric philosophy that the Secret Doctrine talks about, but also in other traditions. Fire is frequently connected to the highest deity. In Gnosticism, for example, some of the Gnostic teachers would say that the highest deity is this primordial fire from which all the eons or angels emanated. In Hinduism too, there is a frequent reference to Agni as the highest deity, the fire. So in the Secret Doctrine, whenever we see the idea of fire connected to some celestial being or even a human being, we are referring to a hierarchy of beings of different degrees of evolution that are particularly connected to a spiritual fire, to creativity from a spiritual point of view, as we are going to say. And Blavatsky mentions here that Shankaracharya regards fire as a deity which presides over time, meaning a deity that is beyond time. Time as past, present, and future is below the deity because the highest deity is eternal. Eternal not necessarily in manifestation, but in the essence. So she talks about a particular kind of deity here, or Dhyan Chohan, which in the Secret Doctrine is frequently referred to as the Agnishwata or the Kumara. So she says the Agnishwata, the Kumara, the seven mystic sages, are solar deities, and these are the fashioners of the inner man. You see, solar deity again has the meaning of fire, and Blavatsky is taking these words, Agnishwata or Kumara, from the Hindu mythology. These, the Kumara or the Agnishwatas, are said to be seven beings, which are the highest beings emanated from Brahma, which is the highest deity, as we are going to see. Now, she says that these Agnishwatas are the fashioners of the inner man, the fashioners of the spiritual individuality within each person. And she goes on saying, they are the sons of fire because they are the first beings. In the Secret Doctrine they are called minds, evolved from primordial fire. So we have the primordial fire that is the Logos, and then there is an emanation of the first seven beings, the highest beings in the system, which are these sons of fire, the sons that come from this primordial fire, also called the minds in the Secret Doctrine. So this is because the manifested Logos, which is a symbol on the physical plane of the manifested Logos within our system, is the sun. And an important aspect of this manifested Logos is the universal mind, which in Sanskrit is Mahat. So the universal mind is this order, this intelligence that permeates the cosmos. As we saw in our previous series, the universal mind is the principle of intelligence that everything that manifests in the system mirrors to some extent, expresses to some extent. So the universal mind is behind any form of intelligence. Now the Agnishwatas, which are called also solar Pitris, as we are going to see, are the first emanations from the universal mind. Therefore they are called the minds, or the mind-born Dhyanis, or the firstborn Dhyanis from the mind of the deity. So there is a connection here between fire and mind, which is important for us to take into account. So she goes on and gives another instance of why fire is connected to these particular deities. The fire or knowledge burns up all action on the plane of illusion, says the commentary. This, she's quoting the original commentary from the Book of Dzyan. Therefore, those who have acquired it, who have acquired the fire of knowledge and are emancipated, liberated, are called fires. So here there is another symbol for the fire. Fire is seen as that which consumes the illusion. In Christianity, we have the idea that or in the Judeo-Christian tradition rather, we have the idea that the Lord is a fire that consumes all, an all-consuming fire. So when we apply this to a psychological aspect, the fire of knowledge consumes, destroys the illusion. Therefore, fire here is a symbol for wisdom, especially spiritual wisdom. The Agnishwatas are divine sparks, are monads, which in previous evolutions have gone through the human experience and have gone also through the experience as some Dhyan Chohans of a lower kind, and at this point they have acquired divine wisdom. This is why the Agnishwatas are the first beings emanated from the Logos, because these are entities which in previous evolutions have acquired this divine wisdom. Therefore, they are called the fires, or the sons of the fire, because of all these different aspects that we are mentioning. These are the solar Pitris, the Agnishwatas, as we said, and they are, in the Secret Doctrine, they are said that to be the givers of the mind to human beings. And we are going to see that in future stanzas more in detail. But you can keep in mind that the solar Pitris or Agnishwatas are either the fashioners of the inner self of human beings, or the givers of mind. This is because their activity allows the awakening of the mind principle in humanity, and therefore the development of self-consciousness. Now, by the way, Blavatsky brings up another kind of Pitris, a lower kind of Dhyanis, which are also involved in the human development. There are several hierarchies involved in the development of a human being, but these two are the main ones. So she says the Pitris are lunar deities and are ancestors because they created the physical man. So we have there on the screen these two deities. The solar Pitris, the Agnishwatas, the givers of the mind, they work on the spiritual planes. And then the lunar Pitris, which are called in the Secret Doctrine Barhishats, the creators of the body. As we are going to see, the Barhishats are, they help nature to develop a human body. It is said in the Secret Doctrine that nature, when unaided, when left to itself, is able to develop a structure up to the animal kingdom. But once we come into the human kingdom, nature cannot go on by itself. So it needs the aid of certain deities. The lunar Pitris, the Barhishats, are said to help nature molding the animal frame that nature had developed by physical evolution into a structure that is able to be the vehicle for mind and for self-consciousness. So the Barhishats prepare the human body, the human brain, and the whole system. And the Agnishwatas, the solar Pitris, once this is done, they awaken in the divine spark the mind and what we call self-consciousness. But we are going to see all that in future stanzas. For the time being, we can take this just as in its general sense. So going on with the shloka, it says, "Learn there is neither first nor last, for all is one number, issued from no number." So the first thing that we see here is an attempt to keep reminding the reader, the student, of the fact that now that we are going into diversity, into exploring, examining, studying the diversity of manifestation, which involves all different kinds of celestial beings and then different kinds of entities on the lower planes, now we are going to be paying attention to the diversity, and we will see some beings that are more evolved than others, and the idea of discrimination between them may come into mind, like the idea that the dhyanis are more important than the atoms that are beginning to evolve. Then the shloka says, "Learn that there is neither first nor last, for all is one number." All is one. What the differences in evolution that we see are differences just in time. In the time that the various aspects of the oneness have begun to develop. So there is neither first nor last. There is no difference in the value of what is in the universe. So Blavatsky explains, "That which is absolute is of course no number, but in its later significance it has an application in space as in time. It means that no manifested thing can be thought of except as part of a larger whole, the total aggregate being the one manifested universe that issues from the unmanifested or absolute, called non-being or no number, to distinguish it from being or the one number." So when talking about how to study the Secret Doctrine, Blavatsky said explicitly that we should keep in mind this oneness always, because if we get lost in the study of the details and lose the idea of oneness, then the study loses its value, she says. So she postulates here that there is one being, the one number, and all the diversity takes place within this one being. If we can think that all the deities and actually any entity that develops in the universe are different forces or different organs, if you want to see it that way, of the one being. So there is no real separation. Now, to understand this in a more technical way, let us see some of the significant numbers that you will find in the Secret Doctrine. We have first the no number, which Blavatsky says is the absolute. This can be related to the zero in among the numbers. Zero is not really a number. Zero has no particular quality. If we take each number as being a quality, zero doesn't partake of any of them. Zero also is interesting in the sense that all real numbers are contained within zero. For example, you can have +1 and -1, and then the result of that is 0. You can have +2 and -2, +5.3 and -5.3. You see, all the numbers are contained within the zero, positive and negative. So the absolute has this characteristic that is a synthesis of all the opposites. We have explored in the previous series the nature of the absolute, and we said that the absolute doesn't have any relative quality, because having one quality would mean the denial of the opposite quality. We cannot say that the absolute is good. for example, because that would mean that anything that we perceive as being non-good is outside of the absolute. Therefore, there is a contradiction because the absolute means the totality. So both good and evil are contained within the absolute as a possibility, but they are synthesized. It's not that the absolute is good and evil. It is neither. However, the possibility of both things are contained within the absolute. This is just like the light, white light, and the colors. All the colors are contained within the white light, but the white light is none of the colors. It's of a different nature. So this is zero, the absolute, which contains everything. Then we have the one. Now, the one in this connection is not one after which there will come another one and then another one. Sometimes this one number, especially in Hinduism, is called the one without a second. That means this oneness, which is the first differentiation, if we want to put it that way, or the first radiation, Blavatsky says, within the absolute, this oneness is the only one, the only unity. All diversity happens within this oneness. It's not that there will be two ones. There is only one, and within that oneness comes all the differentiation. So we could say that the diversity is just the differentiation within this one without a second. So that is the first logos, the unmanifested logos. Now, this oneness goes through a process of polarization, which would represent the number 2, and then it manifests as the 3 in 1. We have explored all this in the previous series, so I'm just mentioning this in a general way. So the manifested logos, sometimes known as the third logos, is still a oneness, but now there are 3 aspects that are differentiated within that oneness. These 3 aspects I mentioned are consciousness, energy, and substance, for example. These 3 aspects in one, the manifested logos, is what awakens when the universe begins, at the dawn of the universe, from the period of rest in pralaya. And it is from these logos that there is the emanation of the 7 primordial beings, which we are exploring right now. So we have, after 3, the 7 primordial beings, the 7 minds, the 7 Agnishwatas that emanate from the logos. Now, there are several other numbers that are important, which I'm not mentioning so that this doesn't get too complex. But as we are going to see, 4 is an important number, 5 is also 12. There are several other numbers, but I'm just taking a few to show you the general process. And then number 10 is normally considered to be a symbol of the totality of 3 and 7. Now, if we are talking about, at this stage in the process of evolution, we are talking about the gods, the highest gods. So the 10 refers to these 7 primordial beings and the 3 aspects of the logos. So the 10 refers to the manifested, creative, highest deity that will develop the cosmos. But then as the universe proceeds, there are other ways in which you can combine the 7 and the 3. You can take the 7 as being the 7 manifested planes, and the 3 as being the 3 planes that remain always unmanifested, and that makes up the totality of the cosmos. So this is just a brief overview of how these numbers are connected to each other. Now, the second sloka in this stanza, the sons of the fire are talking to the sons of the earth, and they say, "Learn what we, who descend from the primordial seven, we who are born from the primordial flame, have learned from our fathers. So we have the primordial flame, as we saw, which emanate this primordial seven. And then we have these sons of the fire that are speaking in this stanza, who have been born from the primordial seven. So you see here the hierarchy of fires, the Logos, the Agnishvatas, and then the sons of the flame that we are going to explore briefly. And they are the ones that are passing on this wisdom to us, to humanity. So Blavatsky says the distinction between the primordial seven and the subsequent seven builders is this. The former, the primordial seven, are the ray and direct emanation of the first sacred four, the Tetractys. Tetractys, tetra means four. So Tetractys is a symbol that was used by the Pythagoreans, and we explored that in the previous series. Is represented by 10 dots arranged in the form of a triangle. And it is said that the relationship between each of these dots describe the relationship of different forces in the universe, and the process of manifestation of the cosmos is an occult symbol full of wisdom if we know how to read it. But also means the sacred four, because these dots are arranged in 4 different levels. And Blavatsky says that the primordial seven are a direct emanation from this sacred four, which is the self-existent one. And then she says, this is eternally self-existent one, eternal in essence, not in manifestation, and distinct from the universal one. So we have the universal oneness within which everything manifests that we saw, like the unmanifested Logos. And then we have this self-existent one, which is a manifestation of this oneness, this unmanifested oneness, which brings together 4 elements, which is what we are going to explore next. So if we look at the hierarchy of the flames, we have everything coming from the unmanifested one. And let's represent that with a circle. The circle is normally a symbol for whatever is universal. It represents also the field within which manifestation is going to take place. Then we have the triple Logos, the 3-in-1, which we are representing here as a triangle. Now, when the triple Logos manifests first, it always does it and stays passive for a while. The first process is the manifestation of this triplicity, but this triplicity is passive. Then, from this state of passivity, it goes into a state of activity. Now, to become active, the triple Logos, which we see here, acts upon the mother being the cosmic substance that is there available. So the union of the triple Logos, the union of the 3 aspects of the Logos, plus the cosmic substance, which is the mother, activates the process of evolution. So we can see it here with the symbol of a triangle within the circle. The circle, the plane of the circle, the surface of the circle representing the primordial substance, and the triangle representing the 3 aspects of the Logos. So this is the sacred four. This is the highest Tetractys. This is the source from which everything will come in the universe. This is the primordial flame from which the primordial seven emanate. So here we have, this is also known sometimes as the father-mother, father-mother, because the logos is the father, the triple logos, the aspect of consciousness, and the primordial substance is the mother. So from this, as we said, come the primordial seven, the firstborn Dhyanis, the Agnishwatas that we are exploring. And then there is a cascade of emanations which end up in the sons of the fire, which Blavatsky explains in this context. The sons of the fire are the divine instructors that the early humanity, the newly born humanity, had. From the point of view of the esoteric philosophy, humanity didn't come up with the arts and medicine and sciences like astrology, ancient sciences like astrology, etc. Humanity didn't come up with this by the slow process of trial and error. At the beginning of humanity, there were divine instructors that guided and taught the child humanity, let's say. So these divine instructors are enlightened beings that come from other evolutions and have the function of guiding the newly formed humanity. They also are the ones that helped the earth to develop the hierarchy of adepts or Mahatmas, which in time take over in this function of guiding humanity. So these are the sons of fire that are talking in the stanzas and teaching to the sons of the earth. Now Blavatsky says, latent during Pralaya and active during Manvantara, the primordial seven proceed from father-mother, spirit highly or illos. Highly or illos, illos comes from the Greek word, is a Greek word that means matter. So basically, this is father-mother, the father being the triple logos, and the mother the primordial cosmic substance, or spirit matter. So she says that the primordial come directly from the quaternary, from this sacred quaternary, from the tetractys, whereas the other manifested quaternary and the seven proceed from the mother alone. So these are indirect emanations. In reality, they are of course all one, but their aspects on the various planes of being are different. So again, Blavatsky tries to come back to the unity once and again. Now that we are beginning to think about the emanations of different hierarchies of beings, Blavatsky says, but remember, there is neither first nor last, because all is one number. Now she says, the first primordial, these primordial seven, are the highest beings on the scale of existence. They are the archangels of Christianity, those who refuse, as Michael did in the ladder system in Christianity, those who refuse to create or rather to multiply, as did the eldest mind-born sons of Brahma. So both in Christianity and in Hinduism, there is the idea that the highest angels or deities, they refuse to create when they are called upon this by the highest deity, by God. They refuse to create or to multiply. In Hinduism, these celestial beings that refuse to create are called the Kumaras. Kumaras means the youthful one, or ones. There are 7 Kumaras. And in the Hindu mythology, it is said that they were very pure yogis, which didn't want to engage in the act of creation on earth. They wanted to remain chaste, and they wanted to remain in meditation and pure and not really entangled in the human evolution. So they refused to be engaged in the formation of humanity when Brahma, or the highest god, called upon the different powers in the universe. Now, the Secret Doctrine interprets this a little differently, as we are going to see. They refuse to create at this stage of evolution because their powers is too high to be useful at the beginning of human evolution. So there are other deities that have to first do a certain work before they are able to help humanity. So we are going to see all that in future stanzas. But basically the idea is that these primordial seven are the mind-born sons in Hinduism, the Kumaras or Agnishwatas. And now comes the last shloka that we are going to explore today. It's a long shloka, and it can appear quite confusing. It has a lot of elements that Blavatsky doesn't really explain, but she explains enough for us to have an idea of what this shloka is talking about. Blavatsky says that this shloka is quite, the meaning of this is quite occult and cannot be given freely. We are going to talk about that. But the shloka says, "From the effulgency of light, the ray of the ever-darkness, sprang in space the reawakened energies, the Dhyan Chohans." And then there is a description of these energies. The one from the egg, the 6 and the 5. Then the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, the twice 7, the sum total. And these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa or formless, the rupa with bodies, and the force or divine man, the sum total. And from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers, the Pitris, within the holy form. So each of these elements represents a celestial being or a force of nature or a state of consciousness. You see how many different elements are here and how complex the manifestation of this stage of the creation of the gods is. So Blavatsky, as I said, will explain some of these terms. First, she says this shloka relates to the sacred science of the numerals, so sacred indeed and so important in the study of occultism that the subject can hardly be skimmed, even in such a large work as the present. It is on the hierarchies and correct numbers of these beings, invisible to us except upon very rare occasions, that the mystery of the whole universe is built. So in occultism, in the occult science, all these hierarchies have some numbers associated to them and some names, particular names and symbols. And she says that in knowing all this, we can understand the processes for the manifestation of the universe. Remember that the occultist is like a scientist. The occultist, in the Theosophical sense of the term, the adepts, the Mahatmas, they are co-workers with nature. So they are actually helping in the evolution of the planet. They become like these angels. They become part of the hierarchy of celestial beings that are behind the evolution of life. Therefore, they need to know about all this, because just like the scientist needs to know about the laws of nature in order to develop technology and develop the different possibilities that science has developed. In a similar way, the adepts have to know about all this in order to manipulate the forces and help nature. Now, of course, all this knowledge which brings power to the person is kept secret, because if it falls in the wrong hands, it can produce more suffering for humanity and the planet. So traditionally, all this knowledge is given in secret in the initiations to those who have transcended their identification with the personal self, with the lower ego. Therefore, these are people who are safe to be endowed with this knowledge because they cannot misuse it. So let's see a little what we can make up from this shloka. The first part says, from the effulgency of light, the ray of the ever darkness, sprung in space the reawakened energies, the Dzyan Chohans. So this goes back to what we explored in the previous series. It's like a summary. The ray of the ever darkness. There is this, the darkness is the absolute, as we have already seen. The idea is that darkness is the natural state of the universe when everything that is manifested ceases to be. For example, light is something that has to be artificially maintained, artificially from a certain point of view. For example, either we have to turn the light on, or we have to, or the universe has to develop a sun that is constantly emanating light. But when the electricity, the power it stops to be given to a house, then darkness comes upon the house. When a star ceases to produce light, then darkness comes upon the system. So darkness is the natural state upon which everything returns when the manifestation finishes. Now, this idea of darkness has nothing to do with evil. Even some Christian mystics would talk about the deity as darkness. For example, Pseudo-Dionysius, an important early Christian mystic, would talk about the deity in its highest aspect as the divine darkness. And so did several other mystics. So from this ever darkness, ever, because even if there is the manifestation of the universe, the darkness is always behind, embracing the manifestation. So from this ever darkness, the light appears when the Manvantara, the manifestation, begins. This light is the unmanifested Logos. And from the light comes the ray, this is the light, and comes the ray of the Logos, which is mentioned in this shloka, the ray of the ever darkness, because this ray comes from the darkness through the Logos, that is a center, a focus through which light comes. So this ray of the ever darkness, acting upon the primordial matter or substance that we have mentioned, the mother, this is called in one of the early shlokas the waters of life. So the ray of the triple Logos, acting upon the primordial matter, produces the Dzyan Chohans. First the seven primordial, the primordial seven, and then all the other hierarchies. So this is what the shloka is saying at this point. And then Blavatsky will explain about the other numbers that we see in the shloka. Remember that the shloka talks about the one from the egg, the 6 and the 5. So Blavatsky says, to make the whole clearer, we have to turn for our illustrations to tenets more familiar to some of our readers, namely the Brahminical, meaning the Hindu tradition. So Blavatsky says the 1 from the egg, the 6 and the 5, give the number 1065. You see, the 1 from the egg, that is the 0, the 6 and the 5. And she says that this is the value of the firstborn deities in Hinduism. Later on, the male and female Brahma Prajapati. In the Mahabharata, the Prajapati are 21, Blavatsky says. And this 21 comes from adding the 10 plus 6 plus 5, which is this number 1065, you get 21, and this is thrice 7, 3 times 7. So what she's saying here is that the number 1065, which if you add it as 10 plus 6 plus 5 gives you 21, is referring to this hierarchy of the Prajapatis, which are a group of Hindu creative deities that emerge or emanate from the supreme God. So she's searching in other traditions for some justification or instances that are agree with what the esoteric philosophy says. And she's showing how this number, the 1065, numerically speaking, is connected to the highest creative deities in other traditions. So she gives us another example. She says that in the Kabbalah, the same numbers are a value of Jehovah. So the 10, 6, and 5, since the numerical values of the 3 letters which compose his name are respectively 10, 6, and 5, or again, thrice 7, 21. The rabbis regard the numbers 10, 6, and 5 as the most sacred of all. So Jehovah or Yahweh are the names of the creative deity in Kabbalah and in the Judeo-Christian tradition. In Hebrew, they are written with 4 letters, with the J or a Y, H, a V or a W, and the H. Now, Blavatsky says that in Hebrew scripture or script, letters and numbers or each letter is also a number. So the J or Y is number 10. If you write it as a number, the same symbol can be applied to a letter or a number. So the J or Y is 10, the V or W is 6, and the H is 5. So again, here there is a relationship between the creative deity in the Judeo-Christian tradition, Jehovah, and this particular number. So let's see now the other important number that is mentioned in the shloka. We saw the 1 from the egg, the 6, and the 5. This is one of the numbers. But then we had another number that is mentioned there. The shloka says, then the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, the twice 7, the sum total. And Blavatsky explains, the 3, the 1, the 4, the 1, the 5, in their totality twice 7, because if you add up 3, 1, 4, 1, you get 14, twice 7, represents this number, 31415, the numerical hierarchy of Dhyan Chohans of various orders and of the inner or circumscribed world. So she says this number, 31415, represents various orders of celestial beings, of Dhyan Chohans, which are circumscribed within the world. When placed on the boundary of the great circle of Pas Not, and she will explain what Pas Not is in stanza 5, called also the Dhyanipasa, the rope of the angels. This is the rope that edges off the phenomenal from the noumenal cosmos. And by noumenal, she means that aspect of the cosmos that doesn't fall within the range of our present objective consciousness. So let's see what she means here. There is the idea in this explanation of the number meaning a hierarchy of various orders, so not just one level, but a group of celestial beings which are within the circle of the phenomenal cosmos. To understand this better, Blavatsky explains a little more and gives us a hint of the connection between this number and the idea of a circle, which, as she says, is a circle that cannot be crossed. The circle, the pass not circle. So she says this number, 31415, being both the number of the circle and the twice 7, once more, mathematically represents the well-known calculation, namely, that the ratio of the diameter to the circumference of a circle is as 1 is to 3.1415, or the value of the pi. So you see here 31415 is the value of the pi, as Blavatsky explains there. And this is the relationship of a circumference to the diameter of a circle. So she says the 1 to 314,149, and then again the 1 to 3 to 1 to 415,927. These numbers are all different decimals after the 3 in the pi. So she says all these relationships that you can work out with the pi, she says, are worked out in the secret calculations to express the various cycles and ages of the firstborn celestial beings, or the period of the Manvantara, the period of evolution, which is this number 311 with 14 more places after the 311, and yield the same. She says if you work all this out, yield the same numbers 1, 3, 4, 1, 5 by a process we are not concerned with at present. So basically what she's saying is that by means of secret calculations, you can take the value of pi and you can start working this out so that it yields different values that describe both the different hierarchies of beings and also the various cycles and ages of evolution within the whole Manvantara. So as you can see, this is this number is quite has an occult nature that, of course, regular mathematicians don't know about, but presumably the Pythagoreans knew about this. Pythagoras talked quite a bit about numbers as being entities and being forces in nature, not just merely numbers. And in these numbers is the secret of the knowledge of cycles, hierarchies, forces, which, as we said, if a person knows about this, that person can learn how to manipulate all these forces, how to get in touch with these different entities, etc. So let's see this from a more general way to have a clearer view of what these numbers represent. So we have the two numbers 1065 and then 31415. The number 1065, which is 3 times 7, we have seen that these are universal deities. This is the number for the first emanation of the highest divine beings. They belong to the noumenal plane. Noumenon is a word that comes from the Greek, which means cause. So in the Greek philosophy, the noumenal plane is the spiritual plane from which the lowest planes come. Everything comes from the higher planes. And the higher planes is where the cause is for a human being, for the world, for everything that happens, where those causes are. And therefore, this 1065 number refers to the deities on the world of spiritual causes. Then we have the phenomenal planes or world, which phenomenon, again coming from the Greek, means appearance. So the phenomena are the appearances that the spiritual causes take when manifesting on the lower planes. So the phenomenal planes are the lower planes, the more material planes. And the number that is related to the phenomenal planes is the number of pi, the 31415, which Blavatsky said describes the group of various hierarchies of being that are within the circle of the ring pass not, within the circumscribed world. The idea of ring pass not is that this rope of the angels, this circle, is the boundary between the phenomenal and the nominal planes. It's a boundary not in space, it's not a physical boundary, but it's a boundary at the level of states of consciousness. This edge, this boundary, cannot be passed by means of the personal consciousness, by means of the manifested consciousness. Only the person who is able to live behind the personality, who is able to live behind the sense of I am this fragment of the universe, only the person that is able to identify himself or herself with the whole, only that person can cross the boundary, can go beyond the ring pass not. For all the rest, for all entities that are not able to do this, then we are circumscribed within the phenomenal world, within the manifested planes. And within this, the deities that rule the manifested planes work. So these are the two main numbers that we see in this particular shloka. And then the last part of the shloka is where there is a mention to all these different elements. It is said, and these are the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa or formless, the rupa with bodies, and the force or divine man, the sum total. And from the divine man emanated the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers, the Pitris within the holy four. So as we can see here, there is a mention to many principles, many different principles, which Blavatsky doesn't explain. She says all this is very complex. We couldn't explain it within the two thick volumes of the Secret Doctrine. And it's also part of as I was saying, part of the secret knowledge. But we can have a sense of what these are. And she says the Devas, the Pitris, Rishis, the Suras and Asuras, the Daityas and Adityas, the Danavas and Gandharvas. These are all Hindu deities. In Hinduism, they have the names for all different kinds of deities. Just as in Christianity also, they have, not very frequently used, but there is a description of 9 hierarchies of beings. So Blavatsky says all these entities have their synonyms in our secret doctrine, but it is useless to give their ancient names, as it would only create confusion. So Blavatsky frequently uses the names found in Hindu mythology. She says, of course, the Secret Doctrine has its own names and its own ancient names, because the Book of Dzyan, from which the Secret Doctrine comes, is said to be the first book, the most ancient of all the books. So all these hierarchies have their own names, but they are not written in any language that is known today. So because of this reason, Blavatsky had to recur frequently to other traditions that are known today. And she says it's not really useful at this stage to give the true or the ancient names of these hierarchies. Now we may have a sense of what this is if we look a little closer to these principles. The shloka talks about 7 principles first. the essences, the flames, the elements, the builders, the numbers, the arupa, and the rupa. These are the first 7 elements or principles mentioned in the shloka. And then the force or divine man, which is the sum total, which is the collectivity of all these other 7 elements, is the synthesis of them all. So the divine man may be different, may refer to different things. If we take it in the context of the creation of a system, of a solar system, for example, then the divine man is the logos. The logos is the prototype, is the archetype of a perfect divine entity, of which all the hierarchies of beings, including a human being, is a copy, a more or less imperfect copy. It is said that the logos is the macrocosm and a human being is the microcosm. So the human being is a material reflection, not completely material. Of course, we have our spiritual aspect, but it's a reflection on the lower planes of the divine logos. Now, the divine man can also represent the spiritual monad of a human being. The spiritual monad is the archetype or prototype of we as personalities. So what the logos is to the spiritual monad in a human being, the monad is to us as personalities. So many times you will find that the divine man may refer to the monad. It all depends on the context in which you find these terms. In the Secret Doctrine, you will find patterns explained, and these patterns can be applied to different planes, to different systems. They can be applied to the solar system as a whole, or to the planet Earth, or to the human being. And since the universe has this holographic nature in which each part is a reflection of the whole, the same pattern is useful to explain any level of reality. So this brings some confusion to many students, because sometimes you may see the divine man spoken of in connection to the logos, and then it may be spoken of in connection to human beings. Always remember that the terms in the Secret Doctrine are patterns, not one particular entity. So these 7 principles here are let's say part of the constitution of the divine man, whether that is the logos or its reflection, the monad. And the divine man is the sum total. And then from the divine man emanated 4 more elements: the forms, the sparks, the sacred animals, and the messengers of the sacred fathers, the Pitris, within the Holy Four. So there is the mention of the Holy Four. The idea in the esoteric tradition is that the phenomenal world, that circle that we saw in a previous graph, is composed of 4 cosmic planes. The whole of human evolution takes place within the 4 lower planes of the cosmos. The 3 higher planes are divine planes, the noumenal planes, which are the planes of the logos and the primordial 7. And then the 4 lower planes are the field of human evolution. You see, in Kabbalah, for example, we saw that Jehovah is composed of 4 letters. In the Kabbalah, this is called the tetragrammaton. Tetra meaning 4 and grammaton meaning letter. So Jehovah is said to be the ruler of the 4 lower planes within which our human evolution takes place. But then on the 3 higher planes there are the divine deities, higher deities. So this is evidently referring to the phenomenal worlds. So all these elements, forms, sparks, sacred animals, and the messengers of the Pitris are emanated from the divine man. If we are thinking of the solar system or the earth, the divine man would be the logos. So these are the hierarchies that are emanated from the logos. Or if we take the divine man as the monad, then all these elements are elements that are within the human being. Because Blavatsky said, within a human being are all the hierarchies that exist in the cosmos. Because the human being is the microcosm of the macrocosm, all hierarchies, all celestial beings, all celestial powers are present within each human being. The problem is that we don't know these powers are dormant in us, and the idea what an adept or a Mahatma does is that the Mahatma first bring their nature in tune with the universal nature. They purify their nature from the personal self, which is always separating itself from the whole. Therefore, they become universal, and once they attuned their natures to the universal nature, then they can awaken these powers that are within the human being, and they become co-workers of nature. So this is why we can interpret this shloka on any level, at the level of the logos or the monad. So this is the end of the class today. We are going to go on with the stanza 4 in our next class. This is a stanza that is a little complex because of all the numerals and ciphers and this hidden meaning that Blavatsky cannot talk about. But as we go on, we will see other aspects of the formation of the universe, which may be a little easier to visualize.